Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We will get started in just a few moments here and give maybe 30, 45 seconds for everybody that might be joining or logging on right now to get situated. And again, thank you guys for joining. Happy Friday. For today's presentation of Solver BI 360, my name is Calvin Elder. You can hit the next slide, Alex. And I'm an account executive here at FMT Consultants. I'm joined by Alex, who comes from one of our trusted partners, Solver. He has joined me. And in case you guys wanted to put a face to the name, that is what we both look like. Please do not make fun of us here. You can hit the next slide. For those of you who aren't familiar with FMT, I'll take a few moments to give you a brief intro of our company. Here at FMT, we opened up for business in 1995, so we are going on 21 years strong. We've successfully implemented over 1,500 projects, have accumulated about 350 clients, and that is growing by the week, spanning the United States into Canada. During this time, we've been able to establish ourselves as Southern California's leading provider of integrated solutions, and along with 21 years of experience, we've grown to well over 80 team members, headquartered in Carlsbad with office locations in Los Angeles and offshore resources as well. You get the next slide, please. At FMT, we do have 5 core values that we kind of abide by. We like to hold ourselves to every day: integrity, service excellence, collaboration, innovation, and passion. So we really do put a strong foot forward to uphold these in all of our services. Next slide, please. That is how we develop the FMT way. It's something you begin to understand once you engage and begin doing work with us. I know some people on the call do work with us. Some people are considering, so we hope to be able to provide the FMT way to you. With a combination of talent, experience, and methodology, we're fully dedicated to the success of your company. We do offer a wide array of services pertaining to ERP through Microsoft, SAP, NetSuite, CRM, SharePoint, Business Intelligence, and Office 365, both on-premise and in the cloud. We do have an entire department dedicated specifically to customer support. We have 13 full-time senior consultants serving you from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. on that front. And we are also very extremely experienced with our consultants who are well-versed in all kinds of backgrounds, industries, and systems. We even have licensed CPAs employed with us for reference to our experience. Next slide, please. This is just a snapshot of our clients. We do have, as you can see, the industries do vary. Our skill sets do vary as well. So we're pretty able to help most clients that come our way. And here are just a few of them. So I'm going to hand it over to Alex, but before I do, if at any point during the presentation you guys have questions, feel free to type them into the comment box. We'll be monitoring it during the entire presentation. We'll answer them at the end. And if you do note the slide present, I will touch upon this towards the end of the show today as well. This is our annual user conference happening May 25th this year at the Marriott Del Mar, San Diego. You can register today at inverge2017.com, and I will again touch upon this towards the end of the presentation. So Alex, if you want to take it over from here.
Sounds good. Thanks, Calvin, and thank you everyone for joining today. Really the presentation is going to be twofold. First is more educational, so just to give you a context of the entire analytical landscape. And then the second part of it is going to be a Solver BI 360 demonstration. It's going to give you a high-level overview of our tool, and this is part 1 of a 3-webinar series. So next week at the same time, on the 21st at 10 a.m., we'll have a management reporter replacement webinar, and that's going to be specific for the accountants that are stuck in management reporter. And then on April 28th at 10 a.m., we'll talk about budgeting. So again, the first part of this is definitely an ambitious goal. Really the reason I wanted to do a webinar that was educational is because we are understanding that data is an asset, and what I've heard repeatedly from mid-sized companies, it's just a daunting process trying to understand the entire business intelligence, predictive analytics, and big data space. And I think it's created a lot of confusion in the marketplace because it is such a huge market and it's changing the way companies think. And having attended like the Dynamics 365 Operation Conference in the past, and a few of the data warehouse and big data conferences, I kind of found myself constantly drawing architecture slides for frustrated CFOs. So the point of this is to kind of simplify and explain how all of those components fit together. And this isn't inherently kind of technical and complex subject matter, so I've created a few slides to show the architecture and describe it in a framework where there's business context to it. And as such, if we look at the agenda, I'll just highlight some of the trends that I've seen in the analytical landscape. And while there are many, these are the ones that I think are going to be most pivotal. Then go through just a general data architecture, and we'll do this both how larger enterprises set up the architecture, and then the specific Microsoft ecosystem and how they're playing in this space. Then we'll digress a bit and go into specifically the BI and CPM market and where that fits. And then we'll look at Solver BI 360 as a company and demonstrate the product. The first slide is what's happening in this world of analytics. And analytics very broadly, but we'll just define it as taking data and making sense of it. First, and what I've seen at a lot of these conferences is there's really a trend for self-service with IT support. And while the world of self-service has been around for a while, I think what a lot of mid-sized companies started to understand was we need IT. We need data governance. We need someone to secure the data. And not to scare you with some horror stories, but a lot of mid-sized companies said, great, we have PowerBI.com, we have these visualization products, but we're getting wrong data, or we're spending countless hours in integrations with a lack of security. And I think that's where the trend is, not just self-service, but IT is getting more involved in selecting some of these vendors to make sure it fits the security protocol of the company. Then the second is these app exchanges. And if you kind of think about it from a consumer space, it's simple to get an app. It's simple to order an Uber or a Lyft to get you from point A to point B. Ordering a movie is simple. I think you're going to see the same in the enterprise space. And Salesforce paved the way and created kind of an ecosystem where you can upload an app and it fits into their platform. And now Microsoft is doing the same thing along with Amazon and all the other major companies. And I think the world of analytics, BI, predictive is all going to live within the app exchange. And what that means for you is, instead of going through and Googling and trying to find out from various people what are the good tools or how do they all fit together, you're going to be able to go to an exchange, type, see reviews, and effectively, order enterprise applications like you do currently in the consumer space. Third, vendor liquidity. Coming from our company's based in Los Angeles, and we're self-funded, but being entrenched in the ecosystem, a lot of these companies are in San Francisco, and effectively, they've raised venture capital, which is fine and helps them grow and helps them target a specific market niche and dominate it. But what you'll see is there has to be liquidity events soon. And there are really only two ways, right? A company can either get purchased or it can go public. And I think right now, this year is going to be a hot market for IPOs in the enterprise tech space. And effectively, these vendors need liquidity. Their employees are starting to get frustrated. And what that means from your perspective, you have to be really careful when evaluating vendors because you should think through, how is their technology going to change when they get acquired by an Oracle or they get acquired by a Microsoft? How's their culture going to change? Am I going to still have that dedicated support person? And those are all important things to think about. But the advantage is definitely, within that consolidation, things are going to become easier. And then the last trend is the citizen data scientist. This is kind of a new role that's building out. It's not someone that's necessarily has a PhD in mathematics. It's not a data scientist, right? And it's not just a senior manager. It's someone with technical chops, someone with statistical sort of knowledge, someone with an accounting background, because at the end you have to describe all of this to your CFO. And these people are becoming extremely valuable in the workforce because it's really someone that can translate all of this data into meaningful terms. And that kind of leads into the next slide. We'll look at the architecture of this. This is my take on it, and my sort of way to simplify everything. There's certainly various structures within the enterprise, but this is going to help you, make sense of all of the marketing buzz terms. If you search in Google right now, reporting, you probably get a slew of various definitions. And, going through all of it is really tough if you're not in this industry. So from, the average, larger company, what do they have and how does it all look? If you follow my cursor, this right here is Internet of Things. Everything now has a internet connectivity. Most manufacturing companies are now producing, shoes, equipment, everything with access to wireless that constantly feeds data. So I said shoes because Nike actually ran this initiative, and they can figure out when the sole of your shoe is running out, so they can send you an email and tell you to purchase some new shoes. And a lot of those, along with social, data that's getting aggregated from the Facebook and Twitters of the world, are getting stored in a data lake. And Hadoop, a word that you've probably heard many times, really what it is, it's a database technology that's made it really cheap and easy to store data. So a lot of times this is unstructured data that hasn't really been thought out of how we're going to use it. Companies just store it in a data lake, and it's a way to say, hey, eventually we're going to make sense of all of this data. And what they do to make sense of it, they hire data scientists, and these aren't the data citizen marks. These are true, most of them have PhDs in mathematics or physics. And they'll sit here and do statistical analysis in languages such as SAS, R, Python. These are clearly very technical folks. And from here, great, they'll present some of those analytics to management. And the analytics that they want to track, the analytics for trend analysis, they'll push back into more of a traditional data warehouse. Well, all of the headlines saying the data warehouse is dead is absolutely not true. A data warehouse is still very much alive. I think it's just becoming more of a place for historical data as opposed to a place to put everything in and store it. Now, what else is in here? Well, naturally, most of companies in the mid-market, they don't have this part. They don't really analyze unstructured data. That's sort of a nice to have in a few years. And what a data warehouse enables them to do is take data from an ERP system, a CRM, your transactional, operational data systems, load them into one place, and then you have that data aggregated to be able to report off of or build data marts. So again, if the sophisticated companies, they go in and after all this unstructured data is made sense of with their data scientists, they push the actual dimensional models, the key performance indicators that they want to track into this data warehouse, which happens to already have data from their operational data sources. Then they build specific data marts. So sales can have a data mart, which is a subset of this data warehouse. Finance can have a separate subset. And then right on top of it are all of the visualizations and corporate performance management tools. I want to pause here for a second and say, this again is kind of ideal for larger companies, but it is important for you to understand this to kind of start asking the right questions. And specific to the Dynamics and Microsoft ecosystem, coming back from a few of the conferences, this is effectively an overview of how Microsoft approaches it. So here is their Event Hub, which is their version of kind of a data lake, place to store and transform some of this. Again, you have Internet of Things devices. You maybe have LinkedIn, just because Microsoft owns it. All of that flows into the common data service, which is in essence where non-technical folks can go in and kind of match these data sources. Now, a lot easier said than done. And again, this part is meant for their larger customers. Where I'm sure a lot of you guys fit is within this middle part, where you have D365 or just Great Plains for now. You have a CRM system, maybe some SQL Server-based system. What you do is load that into their entity store and then use PowerBI.com on top of it. And by the way, if some of you guys are scratching your head and saying, I've had issues with PowerBI.com, not getting me the right data, or I find it really hard to load my ERP and CRM data and do some analysis on that, that's because you do need to set up this entity store. And what you'll find out, a lot of the transformations, such as, hey, flip it, in a debit, flip it so it shows up as a positive in the P&L, those are going to be handled by IT professionals still. I think Microsoft is trying to make it easier, but it's a work in progress. And then from here, what you could do if you did have the IoT and the social data feeding in, you could load this entity store into a common data service. And then using PowerBI.com, you can do visualizations across all data sources. Now, it's funny, when we kind of released our product in the market, a lot of companies said, this is fantastic, but we have data sources all over the place. We have ADP, we have non-Dynamics and non-Microsoft sources. And what Microsoft is doing, they're creating a model. It's called Bring Your Own Database, which is a way, and they'll develop developer tools, where you can load the ADP, that's a payroll service, any sort of other systems into this Bring Your Own Database, and then you can feed that back into their common data service, and then using PowerBI.com, create analytics on top of it. And then right below here, specifically for the accounting and finance folks, you have Management Reporter, which Microsoft announced that they're going to discontinue development on. So they're really leveraging the independent software vendors to do the reporting and budgeting. And I think it's because they're really focused on this unstructured data, because the market is so enormous there for them. And this, you're kind of probably, if you're not a technical professional, you're saying, great, how is all of this relevant to me? How is it going to help me make money and be more profitable? And I've put all of this into 4 pillars. It's really descriptive analytics, which is, you want to know what's happened before, right? These are things that are stored technically in your ERP system or your operational structured data sources. And this is where it becomes really important to have that data warehouse and data mart, because it really is the central version of the truth. Then naturally you say, great, I know what happened. Why did it happen? I want to drill in, do some analysis. That's where a lot of people do it in Excel, but there's a lot of tools that automate the process, a lot of profitable analysis tools. New kind of Gartner classifies these as data exploration, so it's easy to drill in, view different tables for non-technical professionals, and do kind of their what-if analysis here. And in a second, what I'm going to do is kind of move and look at, well, how are mid-sized companies doing it and how are larger companies doing it? Because it is a huge gap. Okay? Now, the other two is really predictive, which is what's going to happen. You have all this social data feeding in, and most companies are really starting to get good at saying the consumer is probably going to do X, Y, Z. So I want to tailor my marketing campaign and my sales force as such. And then prescriptive analytics. And if you kind of think about prescriptive, this is the next trend. It's kind of starting to get into the AI of the world. Is the system should effectively tell you what to do next. And from a technical perspective, here's again where the data warehouse is. This is mainly owned by IT, diagnostic, but more of the finance, accounting, and management professionals. As of now, the predictive is really in the hands of data scientists, which are expensive, so not many mid-sized companies can afford them. And you see a lot of data blend tools like the Alteryx of the world, which just went public, Splunk, a few of these other products. And then here, you really see scorecards, budgeting and forecasting tools here, and strategy management. Well, taking a step back and saying, great in theory, but in practice, I go to these conferences, talk to customers, and really try to listen. And what I figured out is, mid-sized companies, while they're getting better at this, there's still a lot of struggle. And because most mid-sized companies don't really even have a true data warehouse, most of it is, held in the hands of IT, and it's technical. And it doesn't necessarily have to be, because vendors are becoming cheaper. I think it's just an educational gap. And a lot of the the mid-sized companies do struggle with integrating between the data sources. And the reason they struggle is because what happens, the enterprise companies, they have these teams of integration specialists that handle it. And they have a data governance team that handles the data warehouse. And while it's extremely important, unfortunately, mid-sized companies are kind of left with a few IT folks that are trying to manage this, whereas big companies have experts in all of this. But for big companies, what they do find out, because they have so many more data sources, they have a ton of various databases. So their integrations are more complex. Now, moving over here, in the mid-market companies here with the predictive and prescriptive, it's really hard to do this without data governance, without those data scientists. So I really haven't seen most mid-sized companies do this effectively. And that, again, because a lot of these tools don't have data management. They don't have teams of people that are trained in that working with each other. While big companies do, but they end up having so many of these visualization products, and that's because this new trend that, hey, let's sell directly to the business unit is great for enterprise, of course, right? They have teams doing data governance. But for mid-sized companies, it really becomes problematic because, like I showed you in the previous architecture slide, you still need to transform that data and get it into one nice place to do your analysis. But still a huge problem. We just came back from a big data conference, and the number one pain point was really still the disconnect between IT and management. So big companies, you have these teams of data scientists that are really smart doing their analysis, and then you have the senior managers and the executive teams that really haven't fully figured out what to do with that information yet, and getting them in the same room is difficult. Again, because one sort of speaks a very technical language and another just wants to know how all this stuff is going to make them more profitable. And let's move a bit and say, this is great, sure, I want to be there in the next few years, and I want to give you an illustration of that, but let's take it down and say, all right, right now I've heard a lot about Power BI, and you're Solver, BI 360, you're a corporate performance management company. What exactly is that? And this slide is giving an overview of the CPM and BI market. These companies right here, true visualization tools and data discovery, Tableau is really the one that said, hey, let's get data to everyone's hands. And like I previously mentioned, That's great for enterprise companies that have those data governance, but for a lot of mid-sized companies, they really fell flat because they don't have that structure. And if you look at it, the implementation for Tableau went through the roof when they went down market. And that's where PowerBI.com said, look, we have a lot of these mid-sized companies. Clearly, Tableau IPO'd very aggressively in the market, did well. Let's go in, and let's also create a visualization product. And there's PowerBI.com. Amazon's creating one. There are a slew of tools here. I think what happened a few years ago, there were a lot of undifferentiated tools right after Tableau's IPO. And then Microsoft came in and said, wow, this is a fragmented market space. Let's create one tool. But as a lot of you know, it's still not that easy to implement for mid-sized companies. Now, taking a step back and saying, well, all right, Solver, does it compete? And what's the difference between core performance management and BI? And really what these guys do really well are heat maps. So if you want to measure attrition rate, if you want to go in and see how long someone hovers on top of a website before they actually click and buy a product, that's their market. What's not their market, what these companies do, right, which are core performance management tools, they do not do budgeting and forecasting. So if you want to have workflow input data, they don't do that. They don't replace Management Reporter, which is why Microsoft still has Management Reporter. They don't do things such as consolidations, allocations, eliminations. They're not report writing tools. So if you want to write a profit and loss, you're going to have to go back into the desktop version of PowerBI.com, update it, wait until it updates PowerBI.com, and it's about like a 5 or 6 step process. They're not meant for formatted reports. And then finally, it's not Excel based. Now, leaving this BI space alone, and if you do use PowerBI.com and you're happy with it, BI360 by no means competes with it. You can actually put it right on top of our data warehouse. Moving away from the BI space into kind of core performance management, which is here, I'll explain the market. Now, originally, you had these legacy tools. These are typically very expensive. They're the Hyperions, Cognoses of the world. They're on-premise, expensive, but very good for budgeting and reporting. And because of the fact that they're not cloud-enabled, a lot of these tools here, such as the Adaptive Insights, Host Analytics, Anaplan is probably one of the best tools in the space. They raise money around saying, hey, let's kill Excel, let's transform the way Office of Finance thinks, and let's take market share from these guys. Which has worked, absolutely. Adaptive is raised at, I think, a 15 multiple on revenue now. So they're definitely getting, the total addressable market is growing. But I think where they miss is that, finance accounting still loves and wants Excel. So that's where BI360 came in. We really said, hey, let's keep the design experience in Excel, but let's deploy it on the web. And if I look at BI360 in the ecosystem, and it's vetted by Gartner and other research companies, we're really the key player in the dynamic space because of our live integration there. So again, kind of to go back into here, where BI360 fits, we definitely don't fit into any of this, right, into the big data stuff or the social data. But what we do is this component and this core performance management. And then we replace Management Reporter and also Forecaster for Excel. Okay? And this leads into the last 2 slides before I go in and show you the product. And now we'll transgress a bit and say, all right, let's look at BI360 now, right? And BI360, you're based here in Los Angeles. What you will see is, like I said, because of our close integration to Great Plains, we will be ready for D365, both operations and financials. and we're finalizing our multi-tenant cloud version in Azure. And right here is the last slide that I want to show you before illustrating how the product works. BI360 fits in 4 key areas. So we deal with the structured data. We load data from your operational data sources into a SQL Server-based data warehouse. And if you think of kind of the traditional, there's a data warehouse, there's a data mart environment, this is really a data mart specific for finance and accounting teams. And the reason I say that is your finance accounting teams can go in and do things such as create hierarchies, tag their accounts, handle eliminations, multi-currency, things that typically IT guys end up doing on the back end. We've created a user interface for the administrative users to go in and manage. And then from there, you can use our reporting tool, which is Excel-based, to create reports across all of these systems here. Okay? Then, after you're done creating a report in Excel, you turn it into an input form. And that's where you can enable workflow, and really anything you currently do in Excel for budgeting and forecasting, you can do here. And that's, you're creating a budgeting template, you have reports, so actual to budget report, and after you create, you deploy it all on the web for one place to consume all of this data. Now, this is kind of the full BI360 suite and its ability. A lot of our users put it out in phases. So they'll go in and they'll say, hey, and again, just kind of a shameless plug here for our next week, which is the management reporter replacement piece. They want to go in and say, fantastic, I definitely want to grow into all this, but right now I just want to replace management reporter. It's painful for me to close the books. We have a live integration to Great Plains, and what that means live is live off the ERP tables. So when you post a journal entry, you'll immediately see that. Also, you can drill back into the subledger and actually report from any of the modules in Great Plains. And after we released this, some of our kind of larger companies said, yeah, but I also have a payroll, I also have a CRM, I want to push all those into one place. And that's this component, like I mentioned. And then you can have one tool for enterprise reporting. And our value is, if I had to pull it out into 2 bullet points, one is on the structured data environment, we really check off a lot of boxes. So we're an all-in-one tool on the structured data side, where you have the formatted reports, you have the budgeting, and you have the dashboards in one place. Second, and this kind of differentiates us from everyone, like I said, there's one portal for everything, but everything's created in Excel. So the learning curve associated with it is much lower than some of these other tools that are cloud-based and and originally had the marketing message of let's kill Excel. Okay? So with that in mind, I realize this is a lot of information and probably overwhelming, but I did at least want to give you my perspective of high level where the entire analytics market's going, and where BI and CPM fit within that landscape. So without further ado, let's go in and let's actually take a look at our product, the Solver BI360 Suite. And what we'll do is, we'll start off by just showing you from an end user perspective, right, how all this stuff looks, and again, tying it back to the previous slide, how this is enabling better decision making. Then we'll move and I'll show you how to build a report from scratch. I'll do it very quickly. We'll get in a lot more reporting details during next week's webinar. And then, maybe I'll just show you some of the ad hoc data discovery tools that we have within our suite. So, start off, what I'll do is I'll open up a web browser and I'll log in here with my credentials. And this is important. The security that's set up in one place in BI360 is that it's carried across all the applications. And you don't need a license for your ERP system to be able to use this. And this can get as granular as account, journal entry if you really need to prevent someone from drilling down, and clearly it can go and limit security based on department, company, whatever else. You can switch the view here. You can customize it to fit your own aesthetic. And the point here is we make everything easy. So you go in, because it's unique to your username, you toggle certain things as favorites, and then you go and see all the templates that are most relevant to you. Now, some of the administrators in the room are saying, yeah, but I want some order to the way people consume this information and how they manage their day. Over here on the left-hand side, you can set up folders for them. And what we've done here is we've set up, let's go in and input some of the tasks, some of the strategy, and maybe this is something just your executives will see, and that's going to flow down into forecasting. That's going to flow down into, hey, some of the budgeting people, they're going to submit their templates. The approvers are going to manage who input data, when it was input, and approve the budget. Then underneath here, if you have multi-level workflow, so you have managers getting approved by other people, you can set that up as well. Right below, you have the actual to budget reports, and you have more of the analytic stuff here, right below. And since we're here, the analytics, let's go in and kind of take a look at some of this. Here are our dashboards. And this, by the way, is, absolutely, we don't compete with Power BI. These are simple. But in my experience, for most mid-sized companies, this is more than enough. And implementing this and having a data warehouse underneath it to add all the data sources from other places is definitely better than just having Power BI on one data source. And as I skip through this, yeah, there are a lot of companies doing this, the BI, but I think what a lot of them miss is the ability to actually see the formatted reports, the numbers that support all these charts. And here we see, P&L, balance sheet, cash flow statement, sales, maybe a receivable, payable report, something for HR, and here's something even taking Google Analytics data, right, and pushing into the warehouse. Now, it's told by FMT that we have a lot of accounting finance folks on this call. So what I'll do is I'll just open up a really simple profit and loss. And here, this is important. All of this is managed by parameters. So I can go in and say, hey, I want to see, instead of corporate EMEA, maybe I want to see corporate US or something along those lines. So I click it. And by the way, this is where security kicks in. So if I'm an executive that's limited to just corporate US and corporate Canada, those are going to be the only two companies I'll be able to see. And for you, this could be department, division, whatever is relevant. And I'll pick corporate US. Keep the month here as September. Click a button, and now this template's going to rerun. Right? It's going to rerun with giving you corporate US data, and if I expand it out a bit, data for the month of September. Okay? So what do you do next month, right? What you do next month with our tool, and if, by the way, you add a new account in your ERP system, say you add account 40035, in Management Reporter, you'd have to go back in, add that new row. What you're doing here in our tool is you're going in and saying, oh, October, perfect, click a button, and now it will automatically give you October data here for corporate US, because that's the company we picked. The revenues, if I added a new one, it would automatically appear here as a row, and a lot of the people that are actually building this wonder why. I'll make sure and show that to you when I build out the template. But here you can drill back into both the summary level and the subledger. I'll show you the summary, but you can also drill back into your payable, receivable, subledger. You can also, and this is interesting, when we first launched this, the first question that we got was, how do I push this back into Excel? So what we've done is we've created a kind of share button. It provides a QR reader that you can scan, a link here. By the way, we have mobile apps both in Google Play and in the Apple Store for this. And what I will do, which I think is practical, is go in there and just download this maybe, back onto my desktop. So click Save. Then I go into this enterprise. Into this P&L testing that I created. Open it up. Okay. And when I open it, it now gives me the exact same template that I saw in Excel. And you're probably saying, all right, well, right before month end, I know my revenue is going to go up to $1 million. When I click enter, all of the data here changes, right? And that's because all of the formulas that you originally created in Excel were retained in this spreadsheet. Okay? And going back to the portal, really neat. The benefit here is you have one place, right? So if you want to compare the two companies, here you go. Corporate EMEA compared to corporate US. And you're looking at the revenues here, and I know we have some CFOs on this call, and they're saying, go back to actually, or some analytic folks, they're saying, go back to those charts. I want to see a graphical interpretation of how my revenue is growing. So what you can do is scroll down now and see some of the supporting revenue. And if I open this up, it gives you your product sales, your service sales, your maintenance. This is loosely based on our business, but you'll be able to customize all this. And then you click, and you can see all of the data underneath here change as well. And again, if I'm looking at this pie chart, I'm saying, corporate Canada, why 12%? Click, and I'd say that 31% of the revenue came from the fourth quarter. Now, charts that are more tailored to finance accounting folks, where you can see, I want to see this company or department, the receivables change. You can see that this one's an outlier. And with most of the visualization, like the PowerBI.coms of the world, if you're implementing it alone, that conversation ends there. Great, you see an outlier. With us, you go in and say, all right, computer equipment leasing, great. Now I actually want to see a supporting report. I want to see the receivables. So you click a button, which is going to pull up based on the parameters, and now you see a formatted report with the ability of going in here, and if you want, drilling into the invoice here. Let's go back, and you're saying, fantastic, but you said all in one tool. I get my reports, I get that. I can view my sales reports. But what about budgeting and forecasting? Again, not leaving the platform, just going back. And what I'm going to do now is go in here and show you some budgeting and forecasting templates. I'll show you a very simple one just because of time. And this is right here illustrative of the benefit of having reporting and budgeting in a software. You want to forecast the rest of the year. Now September, you go in here, and by the way, I'm a solution architect, so there are some numbers here, so for you it would be blank. Also, another note, these are all just templates. You'll be able to customize based on your own business. This is just to conceptually show you how this works. I get 9 months of data, 3 months of forecast. You go in, input data here. And after you're done, you click this Store Data button, which stores it back into the database. What's the point of this? Well, if you're currently using Management Reporter in Excel, let's just pretend that you are. What you'd have to do, if it's now October and you want to reforecast, you'd have to copy and paste the data into October, save as, and change the template. Whereas what you're doing with our tool, you're going in and saying, oh, okay, now October, click a button, and I'm not going to save changes. Actually, a pretty powerful button. It confirms whether you want to save the changes in case you made a mistake. Now I expand this out, and you see October filled in with actual data, right, that I can drill into. What's the point? Well, the point is, one, less mistakes, right? You're not copy and pasting anymore. Two, you're saving time. You don't have two templates, you have one. But now multiply that for all of your departments or divisions, and that's really where you start seeing the benefit of this. Here for a different department, instead of going to a different template, you pick up finance and accounting. Instead of sales and marketing, click a button, and now it gives you, finance and accounting. So everything's managed here, and everything's from your systems getting pushed in. Let's go back, and I'll just show you one more. We do have very complex modeling examples. I think on this call, because we went through so many other complex items, I'll save this. But because of the fact that you're building in stuff in Excel, really complex what-if analysis we've built out to measure, hey, what would the impact be if economy adjusted? Stuff like that. And that could be any revenue driver. But to look at something a little more practical, maybe what I'll do is I'll actually, sorry about that, lost internet there for a sec. Maybe what I'll do is go in and say, hey, let me look at payroll, right? This is something just a budget manager would see, probably. Sorry, let me go back to the budget submitters. So a budget manager might see these assumptions. So you go in and you'll say, here's the taxes, benefits. I'm showing this example as an input. This could be anything you want. This could be your revenue driver, expense driver. Conceptually, just kind of understand that. This is just an example. And what I'll do is just to show how it works, I'll go in and say, great, I'm on a FICA rate of being 7.55. Click this data, store data, and now that gets pushed back into the database. What's the benefit of that? Well, the benefit is, if you're a non-budget manager, you don't really care about the FICA rate. Let's say you're just a department lead. You go and say, all right, well, here, I'm in charge of finance and accounting. Great. Click a button. And by the way, you can have this set up so it automatically pushes out to the department heads for only their department. They expand out. And all of this data, the full-time, part-time employees, the hire dates, the rates, that's all coming from a payroll system. That's a huge benefit, right? We integrate payroll data and right beneath here, your general ledger in one place. And everything in yellow is stuff you can input. And so if I look here, maybe Aubrey's going to get a promotion to senior accountant. That's going to happen in maybe June of next year. You could put the annual salary. You could go in and say, well, if Aubrey does really well, maybe in November we want to push the salary by 7%. And right beneath here, the part-time employees, we'll actually hire a new accountant, and it's going to start in March. Here's the rate, and it says to be hired number 1. When you actually hire someone, it will replace with that name. Scroll over here now that I'm done filling out in yellow, and let's look at Aubrey here. Zeros all the way until June, because that's when her salary starts, right? You see kind of the increase here. And then I continue scrolling through. Total compensation gets calculated automatically without you having to do Excel formulas. And now the FICA rate is 7.55. And the huge benefit of this, right, is that you're not using links in Excel that might break, right? If you're in financial planning and analysis, you're a budget manager, it's painful going through Excel links. You're not doing that. It's automatically linked and used to calculate everyone's taxes and benefits. And yes, this does have minimum and maximum. Okay? That's more kind of probably a bottom-up approach where every department head inputs their own data. If you have more of an Office of Finance inputs for everyone, then instead you can go in and say finance, HR, admin, click OK, click a button, and now I'm going to save this changes again. By the way, this will really show you the power of this template. When I expand this out, it gives you administration. Here's the full-time, part-time employees, because that's the department I picked. Stores down to the GL. Finance and accounting, full and part-time, stores to the GL. and HR, full-time, part-time, source to the general ledger. And so very, very powerful. And maybe the last template that I do want to show before we get into how this stuff was built, operational expense. For next year, let's do an operational expense budget. Pick your parameters. I think we've covered that. Over here on the right-hand side, you have 9 months of actual and 3 months of forecast. Guess where that forecast is coming from? From the very first template that I showed to you. And right below here, you have some of the accounts are budgeted on other forms. So here's the full-time salary account. What you can do is, perhaps if I scroll down, what I want to do is say, hey, what exactly do we spend money on? Like what special events? So your user can go in and add line item details. So they can say, events for sales folks, right? And put in the numbers here and whatever months it belongs, and scroll down and continue doing this. You can kind of see how you're now getting a much more granular budgeting process, right? Other than for finance, right? And then go in, store that data back. They can add comments here. So, January, we had a event for new employees. And the point of doing all this is your user now goes in and they're going to be able to drill into those, right? And see that Alex decided to budget them. Now, consulting, maybe, hey, you just want to take last year's trend, right? So I'm going to spread it, click apply. You just want to take that to account for seasonality. And, your business is going to grow, so you want to increase every month by 8%. Click this button, and it applies them, right? By the way, you can do many spreading mechanisms. I just show you one for simplicity. Then you go in, store data. There's also a check mark button that's disabled here. And what that is workflow. So that will go in and say, hey, administrator knows that Alex decided to submit, the budget there, and it stores it, and then you can manage. And maybe if we just go back in here and take a look at it, this is probably just a file for the people approving it. It goes in, and all the templates right here. Stand this out a bit. It shows all the users. You could put start end dates. You can see that demo user 1, the template personnel is up for approval. Once you approve them, great, it closes out the template. You can see demo user 2, the assumptions and personnel are hidden from them. This is important because it makes it easier for people to access their information, right? And this one's up for approval. So nice to keep tabs on people when they budget. Okay. Now, important before I get in and actually build a template, or actually, because of time, I want to save some for Q&A. We'll build it on the next webinar. I'll just show you how a template was built. What's important, right underneath here, you get your actual to budget reports, all in the same place. You're not leaving the platform, which is really advantageous because you don't have to worry about integrations. Everything's integrated on your behalf, and so on. Okay. So what I want to do is go in and say, kind of we get the benefit here. We got forecasting, we got budgeting, we got some other examples. You could grow into this. So you can start with simple reporting here and then add these layers and then pay for them as you go. Okay. Now, how all this stuff was built, it was just the deployment of it on the web. All of this was built in Excel, right? And by the way, we have a lot of previous templates that were run for various companies. We have about 14 verticals, so industry-specific templates you can absolutely leverage. But what you will see, this is easy to use, so you should be able to build a lot of the stuff yourself. Just to show you one of the more complex reports, this is what I call a decision pack. And now we'll explore it a little bit from what we call a power user's perspective, the person building this, right? This is a board packet. What you see is, it's linked to a database. All of this is gibberish right now because all of the numbers are going to change based on, results in your database. And so, if I'm looking at this, All formulas are Excel. So if you have, internal rate of return, net present value, VLOOKUP, HLOOKUP, all of those, you can leverage. Now, how is it different than Excel? Well, it's linked to a database. So your payroll, GL, all of it's linked, right? And just kind of quickly going through here, you see all this is gibberish because it's automatically going to give you your top 10 receivables. Over here, you get your payments. We'll look at it when we actually, execute it for parameters. P&L here, here it goes in and says, hey, pull in all of my revenue accounts. And that's why when you add a new account, it automatically appears here. Okay? I mean, your accounts, just to give you one more example, right here, if I add a new account, we use ranges. It would automatically appear if I add it in my ERP system. Okay? Trend analysis, this is all from the person building it, and it's going to roll into a news tab. Right now it just says descriptions, these modern proven period end. It's gibberish because these words are going to be triggered based on what the end user selects. And here we can look at it. It's all just if statements, really, right? Saying if above, the P&L is above 20%, say the word great. If below, say another word. And you create this stuff once, and then you're able to reuse this template over and over. So your analysts can actually analyze the data. And so we'll go in and maybe just say corporate US, actual to budget, and we want to see September, right? Click a button based on those, and then all of these are now going to fill up with data that are going to roll into a news tab. I want to leave a few seconds for questions, so I'm not going to have the time to show you, any more examples, but we have plenty of them. And if you're looking here, right now I'm executing it in Excel, which is one way to deploy it. Let's say you don't want the web, definitely the less expensive way to go. But what you could do is just click this upload report button, and then same exact thing, except you're just doing it on the web. So because I picked corporate US in September, it went in and said, hey, corporate US sees modern improvement, or sorry, sees great improvement in September as the month, shows you how profitable you were, your revenues, your customers, your top products, who we owe money, and who owes us money, right? Good overview for an exec. Here you have a dashboard, just regular chart in Excel, but again, as your debt equity ratio changes, it's going to automatically update. Trend analysis, rolling 12 months, P&L for September, expanding rows here with the ability of going in, drilling in, and if I click this, expanding columns as well. So because it picked September, 9 months of data. Cash flow statement, balance sheet, a few more just charts in Excel, sales. So if I click, I can see the salesperson that sold this product, date they sold it, quantity, unit price, payment, top 10 vendor payment, and receivable. Again, right, point is next month you go in, this is no longer in the 10th place, the system automatically updates. So a lot of automation here, which is hopefully going to free up some of your time so you can worry about that big data stuff as opposed to putting together spreadsheets. But that's really the point here. Again, right, next month or if you want to run it for a different division or company, whatever, you're going to create these parameters. You take it, you run it, and now all of the data here, along with the words, if the performance changed next month, will go and reflect the parameters you picked. And then, based on this, it actually says, we'll delay here, corporate US, it sees weak decline in October, right? And if I go to this P&L, clearly, it goes in and shows you, 10 months now instead of 9 with October's data. So on that note, know it's right around the time for us to call it a day. That if I look at here, and let me just summarize what we learned in the PowerPoint. What we looked at today was really this component right here. And hopefully we're going to automate and make this a lot easier so you can spend time focusing on this other stuff. And I do think it's becoming increasingly important because the big companies are getting to know their customers quicker and better because they have access to this. And our goal, is really to make this happen, right? Because we have budgeting in the context of our architecture, so you can focus on other things. And what we looked at today, we started with this piece, viewing all the data, the reports, formatted reports, the budgets, tell you what to do, and some of the charts specific for finance and accounting in one place, right? We saw it was created in Excel and then pushed up to the web. And then, what we'll look at next week is actually how to create a report live from GP. So with that said, what I really want to do, open it for questions, and our contact information is listed here. Calvin, can you read off any questions that we might have?
Yeah, so we don't have any submitted questions it's showing right now. But again, if anybody does have questions, we will be following up with all the attendees, so you can ask at that time if something does come up.
Great. So to finish off, I just want to thank everyone for joining. Our contact information is mentioned below. And just generally, right, I'm obsessed with the space, so if you have any questions about BI, predictive, what tools are good, let me know. The total addressable market and all this is growing. There's going to be a lot more marketing buzz, and I think it's only going to become harder because in the next few years before it becomes simple, and you have one enterprise app exchange to get this stuff. So in the meantime, before we have a perfect world, feel free to reach out. So thank you everyone for joining today. I really appreciate your time.